Tonight, let your thoughts drift like morning mist rising from a hidden valley, curling softly through time, as we return to a forgotten age where wisdom wasn't shouted in marketplaces, but whispered among bamboo groves, where the stars above were not distractions. If you enjoy these restful journeys into the silent corners of history, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if it brings you a moment of peace. The scent of damp earth lingers in the air, mingling with a trace of wood smoke. Somewhere nearby, a bamboo flute plays a quiet tune, rising and falling like breath. The sun filters through trees with leaves like green coins, casting a golden light on the forest floor. They lived in song and speech, in stories passed from teacher to student. Memory was the vault that preserved wisdom, even in the face of historical disruptions, like the infamous burning of books and burying of scholars under the Qing dynasty. The essence of these ideas remained. The tale is still debated, but its lesson lingers. Knowledge can be threatened, but it rarely vanishes completely. The concept of the mandate of heaven arose during this time, tying celestial order to political legitimacy. If rulers were just, the heavens supported them. If they became corrupt, disasters or rebellion signaled their fall. In this worldview, the universe was not indifferent. It observed. It responded. It guided. Breathing techniques, early meditation, posture, and attention were woven into many traditions, though not always written down. Harmony was not just a metaphor. It was something you practiced daily in how you moved, spoke, and lived. This has been a walk through the minds and mysteries of a time long past, and yet somehow near. Ancient China was not only a place of war and dynasty. It was a place of thought, of deep humanity, and of a longing for understanding. The philosophers of that time left behind more than scrolls. They left behind a living conversation, one that continues even now in quiet walks, in moonlit moments, in your thoughts, right here beneath stars that shine as they did 1,000 years ago. Sleep well, dear listener. Let the echoes of this ancient wisdom carry you gently into rest. Life back then was intimately tied to the rhythms of the earth, the rise of crops, the turn of seasons, the pull of tradition. Such trees became symbols in poetry and thought estimates to endurance and quiet growth. The ancient sages didn't speak only to emperors and officials. Their wisdom was practical. It addressed how to be a good child, a fair neighbor, a wise leader, a decent human being. These ancient teachings do not demand, they invite. They don't instruct through noise, but through example. They offer questions, not declarations. They gently ask you to look within and to listen not to the shouts of the world, but to your own inner rhythm. You might even think of them as the earliest life coaches, though they delivered no slogans or sound bites, just hard-earned reflection, shaped by study and silence. Fleeting and fragrant, they remind us of life's delicate beauty, an image treasured by many of these ancient thinkers. The moonlight bathes everything in a soft hush. One of the most compelling ideas from this era is that of the Tao, or the way. Rather than pushing, striving, or controlling, the sages advised us to observe, adapt, and flow with life as it is. Not laziness, but graceful responsiveness. Modern life often pulls us in every direction. The ancient way asks us to return, to breathe, to let go. The pond invites reflection, literally and figuratively. Many philosophers of the time sought retreat not in palaces, but in nature. They went to forests, mountain huts, riverbanks. There, they watched the way water flows around stones, how trees bend with the wind, yet do not break. For them, nature wasn't only beautiful, it was wise. It taught patience, surrender, and the importance of balance. Life is brief. It blooms and fades. And in that brief bloom, we are asked to live with virtue, harmony, and grace. The question of human nature was debated with passion. Were people inherently good, as Mencius believed? Or must we be shaped and corrected by rules and institutions, as the legalists maintained? These weren't just abstract musings. They were attempts to solve real, everyday problems in a world that often felt unstable. But beneath that surface simplicity, the questions people asked were anything but simple. What does it mean to live well? What holds a family or a state together? Picture it, a Confucian scholar advising a ruler on ritual and virtue. A Taoist sage sipping tea beneath a pine tree, speaking of non-action and the Tao. A Mohist preaching universal love and opposition to war. A legalist arguing that strict law, not sentiment, keeps order. Though their answers differed, their questions were shared. How do we live well, and how do we live together? What is the nature of the world, and what is our place within it? Before you stretches the timeless world of ancient China, long before the thrum of traffic, long before the digital glow. This is a time of winding rivers, rising mist, and quiet fields. But beneath this calm exterior lay centuries of challenge and transformation, the spring and autumn and warring states periods. Let us know in the comments where you re-listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. In the stillness between battles, minds began to stir. Great thinkers emerged, not generals, but scholars, poets, and mystics. From Confucius to Laozi, from Mozi to the legalists and beyond, each brought forward visions not just of how to rule, but how to live deep, enduring questions that still echo today. Now, dim the lights, nestle under your blanket, and let's begin. But silent companions in the search for truth. Welcome, dear dreamers, to the sleepy fireside, where stories soften the edges of your day and gently carry you into the deep quiet of the night. You find yourself at the edge of a calm and ancient landscape. Though often turbulent and fractured by war, these were also centuries of remarkable insight. You walk down a narrow, winding path of worn earth. Many of these early teachings were not written in books, at least not at first. As you continue along the path, the fragrance of plum blossoms floats on the wind. You arrive now at a quiet pond, its surface still and silver, mirroring the sky. This was the era of the 100 schools of thought, a time of competing but often overlapping visions. As the sun dips low, the stars begin to emerge. Those same stars ancient scholars once studied with care. You pass a gnarled old tree, its bark marked by time. It stands alone, yet not lonely. Now the moon begins to rise, casting a pale, tranquil light across your path. Philosophy was not just about thought. It included the body and spirit too. As your walk continues, the air grows still, and something within you mirrors that stillness. And now, as the path gently fades into darkness, you pause, turning back to see where you've come. You feel a sense of deep calm settle over you as the path winds into a quieter, more sacred corner of the ancient landscape. The air is soft, the breeze light, and the world around you seems to exhale. You've entered the realm of Laozi, the mysterious sage behind Taoism. Imagine an old man with kind eyes and a subtle smile, speaking in metaphors rather than commands, inviting you not to act, but to be. There, he wrote the Tao Te Ching for a gatekeeper, then vanished. Whether it happened or not, the story fits the man. Quiet, humble, and deeply in tune with impermanence. And night, all examples of perfect, wordless wisdom. Laozi saw ambition and materialism as roots of suffering. He encouraged returning to what is essential, not in rejection of life, but in appreciation of its quiet gifts. Today, with our overflowing calendars and overfull closets, his message is more relevant than ever. To live with less is to live with more space for peace. The day is giving way, and so too does effort begin to surrender to ease. Not as a visitor, but as a part of it. Laozi didn't just teach detachment, he taught reconnection, a gentler rhythm, the soft current of a wiser way, with nature, with others, with your own quiet center. He wasn't giving us answers. He was showing us how to listen. Laozi often spoke in paradoxes. The soft overcomes the hard. It sounds impossible until you realize how often it's true. A kind word diffuses anger. A flexible branch bends where a rigid one breaks. Life flows best when we stop fighting it. He questioned why humans complicate what the universe has made simple. Why do we chase and grasp when everything flows best in stillness? Perhaps it's in the spaces between things, in silence, in breath, in the way a leaf drifts slowly to the ground. The Tao doesn't ask you to chase it. It waits for you to notice it. And in this moment, you do. All these reflect its principles: flow, balance, beauty in asymmetry, power in stillness. Ironically, a philosophy of non-striving led to powerful systems of movement like Tai Chi, where yielding becomes strength and softness becomes defense. This blend of art and energy carries Laozi's teachings forward, quietly alive in every gentle motion. You might want to sit beneath a tree and simply observe. No thoughts, no plans, just presence. Some scholars suggest Laozi might not have been a single person, but a symbol for generations of wisdom. This uncertainty only adds to the serenity of his legacy, a philosophy not rooted in personality, but in principle. Laozi spoke of the uncarved block, a natural state of things before we shape or define them. To return to that state is to let go of labels and expectations and rediscover the self underneath. It is not about erasing who you are. It is about removing what doesn't belong. The layers of roles, titles, and obligations fall away, and what remains is something simple, honest, and whole. At the heart of Laozi's teaching is the Tao, the way, an invisible, ungraspable current that guides all things without force. It's not something to chase or understand, but to live in harmony with. These aren't enemies, but complements, forever dancing. You start to see this pattern in your own life: the push and pull, the work and rest, the noise and the silence. Laozi reminds us that peace comes not from choosing one over the other, but from recognizing the rhythm between them. This is the Tao in action: strength in softness, progress through yielding. Water wears down stone, not by power, but by persistence. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing without strain, effortless action. Like the way a vine grows or clouds drift, they don't plan or push, they respond. Life, he would say, doesn't require domination. It requires alignment. Think of how you sometimes try to force a solution, only to realize that letting go was the answer all along. Laozi would say that we often create struggle by trying too hard. Instead, we should become like water, adaptable, calm, and steady. Just hearing that, you might feel your shoulders loosen and your breath deepen. Laozi didn't teach by instruction, but by pointing to the natural world and saying, "Watch." He believed the universe moves effortlessly, and that we should too. Beside you, a stream trickles gently over stones. Its path is never forced, yet it always finds a way. There's a legend that Laozi, tired of the chaos of the world, left China through a western pass. Leaves whisper overhead as you walk beneath ancient trees. Laozi's key concept, Wu Wei, is often misunderstood. Nature was Laozi's favorite teacher. The unfolding of a fern, the glide of a heron, the quiet cycle of day. A central idea in Taoist living is simplicity. Not just less stuff, but fewer desires. The trail now rises into a secluded grove, where the air is crisp and still. And yet, for all its quiet wisdom, Taoism has shaped entire cultures. Its influence touches Chinese gardens, brush paintings, calligraphy, and martial arts. As you rest in this grove, you ponder yin and yang, the Taoist view of balance and opposites, light and dark, movement and rest, fullness and emptiness. The trail dips gently, and you enter a clearing bathed in silver moonlight. You feel a deep kinship with the world around you. Perhaps the Tao is not something distant and mysterious after all. You leave the grove not with knowledge, but with something better, a feeling. The gentle current of the Tao now carries you into a lighter, more whimsical realm, where paradox and playfulness gently dance through the air. The world around you begins to shimmer and shift, as if reality itself were fluid, open to interpretation. It reminds you of Zhuangzi's most famous parable, the dream in which he became a butterfly, only to awaken unsure if he was Zhuangzi dreaming of being a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he was Zhuangzi. But unlike thinkers focused on social order or politics, Zhuangzi turned inward, crafting fables and metaphors aimed at freeing the individual mind. His writing is filled with humor and absurdity, a rarity in the often solemn world of classical philosophy. Zhuangzi encouraged relativism, the view that perspectives are inherently limited, and what is right from one angle may be wrong from another. When his wife died, he didn't mourn in the expected way. He sang, explaining that she had simply changed forms like seasons or clouds. This wasn't coldness, but deep understanding. In a world that avoids death, Zhuangzi's peace with it feels both radical and comforting. When asked to serve in government, he compared himself to a sacred ox adorned and celebrated, but destined for sacrifice. This openness mirrors Zhuangzi's fasting of the mind, a meditative practice of emptying the mind to perceive things as they are, without projection. Let go of categories, expectations, judgments. Just see, just be. Imagine applying this during your morning commute. It may be difficult, but even a few breaths of this quiet could change everything. Better to be a muddy turtle, dragging its tail in the dust, than polished and caged. But when offered 3 in the morning and 4 at night, they were thrilled. Same total, different packaging. Here, there's nothing but wild grasses and open space. This is where Zhuangzi's idea of freedom lies, not as escape, but as detachment from external labels. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've let go of needing them. Zhuangzi didn't want to solve your problems. He wanted you to dance with them. His world isn't one of certainty, but of wonder. A butterfly's wing, a crooked tree, a mind that doesn't cling, these are his gifts to you. To be like the wild horse uncaged, authentic, true to itself. This is Zhuangzi's Tao. Not a path to walk, but a sky to drift through. And in that drifting, you find something precious yourself, unburdened. Not defined by status or success or others' opinions. True freedom is internal, quiet, and immensely powerful. It's Zhuangzi's playful way of showing how much of our emotional life is tied to illusions. We argue, worry, strive over shadows. The emphasis on paradox, sudden insight, and laughing at the seriousness of it all, these are echoes of his thought. Historians often trace this shared thread, the liberation of the mind through mystery, silence, and the absurd. It's a reminder to choose your path wisely, not by what impresses others, but by what aligns with your own rhythm. Life, he reminds us, is not about permanence, but about movement, cycles, and change. He would say, don't cling so tightly to your viewpoint. Let it float, change, dissolve. Trying to force a single truth onto a complex world is like asking a fish to climb a tree. He didn't force the cuts, he flowed with the animal's natural form. This wasn't talent, but deep, intuitive alignment. Zhuangzi held this as an ideal, effortless skill born of understanding, not struggle. Perhaps your own daily life could benefit from that mindset. Not doing more, but doing with presence, with quiet awareness. Maybe the problem isn't others' ignorance, but your own certainty. Scholars still debate whether the Zhuangzi was authored solely by him or collected over time. Either way, it pulses with the same irreverent, freeing spirit. Zhuangzi believed true wisdom didn't come from rigid plans, but from following one's innate nature. It's about moving with the current, not against it. Not laziness, but spontaneity. like a bird turning in the wind or a leaf drifting downstream. You smile, thinking how modern life trains us to schedule everything, but here you are reminded that sometimes the most meaningful steps are the unplanned ones. It's not just a poetic image. It challenges the very nature of identity and perception, leaving you gently unsettled, delightfully uncertain. You begin to wonder, how solid is this moment, really? You've stepped into the world of Zhuangzi, the sage of dream and doubt, laughter and liberation. A philosopher with a sparkle in his eye, he didn't offer rigid truths, he offered stories, questions and invitations to see beyond the frame. You stroll quietly through this shifting landscape when a butterfly flits past. Its erratic, graceful movement seems both spontaneous and effortless. Zhuangzi's philosophy emerged in the later Warring States period, a time of intense debate, shifting power, and intellectual flourishing. As you continue your walk through a dappled forest, you remember one of Zhuangzi's tales, the gnarled tree, so twisted and useless, and no one cuts it down. It lives precisely because it escapes human utility. The message is clear. What society calls useless might actually be free. You pause and reflect. How often have you judged your worth by productivity? Zhuangzi gently suggests another measure, existing freely, untouched by external demands. A hidden waterfall murmurs nearby, its sound blending with the rustling trees. Death, to Zhuangzi, wasn't something to fear. It was part of the transformation, the flowing of the Tao. The trail becomes softer now, less defined, almost inviting you to wander freely. You recall the story of Butcher Ding, who carved oxen with such grace his knife never dulled. In Zhuangzi's time, many scholars offered advice to rulers in exchange for prestige. But Zhuangzi declined. The forest thins, opening to a vast sky painted with orange and violet. You chuckle, remembering the story of the 3 monkeys who were unhappy with their share of acorns. 4 in the morning and 3 in the evening. The wind grows stronger as you reach a wide field. Interestingly, Zhuangzi's influence reached far beyond Taoism, especially into Chan Buddhism, which would evolve into Zen. Now, under the growing blanket of stars, you feel lighter. You carry with you now a sense of play, of paradox, and the quiet joy of not knowing. The playful echoes of Zhuangzi's butterflies fade gently as you step onto a path that feels more grounded, more deliberate. The air here is filled with the scent of aged paper and carefully tended gardens. Confucius believed that humans thrive not in isolation, but in structured relationships. Still, his words preserved in the Analects outlived him, becoming the foundation of Chinese governance, education, and moral thought. A lesser-known fact, Confucius came from humble beginnings, emphasizing that virtue is not inherited, but cultivated. For him, the family was the root of moral life. Filial piety, deep respect, and care for one's parents and elders was not blind obedience, but heartfelt gratitude. From family, this reverence extended outward, to teachers, officials, and rulers. A harmonious home became the seed of a harmonious society. You may think of your own family, the quiet gestures, the shared meals, the deep, sometimes unspoken bonds that anchor your life. Confucius believed that leadership begins with the self. If a ruler is virtuous, the people will follow naturally, like grass bending with the wind. Like planting a tree for future generations, Confucius's path is about contributing to something enduring. He believed deeply in education as transformation, and not just of the mind. In his ideal, one developed in every direction, morally, physically, intellectually, and artistically. The Confucian path continues not in retreat, but in service, reminding you that even the smallest gesture, done with sincerity, can echo across generations. This moral influence, not force, was his vision for political order. This well-rounded approach aimed to develop harmony within and without. It reminds you that true wisdom comes not just from books, but from movement, rhythm, balance, and self-expression. Historians trace the evolution of these arts, showing how they shaped generations of scholar officials, grounding intellect in practice. You may find this deeply reassuring, that change begins not with control, but with example. Confucius didn't teach escape or transcendence. He taught engagement, asking you to bring your best self to every relationship, to act with care and consistency, and to build harmony not through force, but through example. Historians still debate the exact roots of his journeys, but all agree that his influence reached far beyond his footsteps. In truth, it was a channel for emotion, a way to express love, grief, joy, and respect through appropriate form. It reflects Confucius' idea of rectification of names, that people should live up to the titles they hold. He focused on the human realm, not abstract metaphysics. His concern was here and now, how people live, treat one another, and build communities. He didn't chase mysteries, he cultivated clarity. It's a grounded approach, reminding you to care more about your actions than your speculations. A father should act like a father, a ruler like a ruler, and so on. These weren't dry arguments, but lively exchanges that shaped the era's intellectual spirit. His emphasis on virtue and education stood in contrast to Taoist spontaneity or legalist control. And yet, there were overlapped shared concerns beneath the differences. Historians still study these rich philosophical dialogues, seeing how they informed one another and formed the foundation of Chinese thought. When names and roles align with behavior, order follows. For Confucius, it wasn't about status, it was about responsibility. Society, like a garden, needs thoughtful tending. You may find yourself pondering your own roles, friend, sibling, colleague, and whether they're lived with integrity. Just like dance requires steps, but shines through feeling, rituals allowed society to flow gracefully. Later interpretations often hardened these practices into dogma, but Confucius's original vision was more flexible, sensitive to context, always aiming for balance. Historians often highlight this difference between early and later Confucian thought. His vision of a harmonious society rested on lie, or ritual propriety, not just in ceremony, but in daily interactions, guiding people to act with respect and care. Confucius believed that education was the key to self-cultivation, not just to gain knowledge, but to become a Zhuangzi, a noble person. This noble status wasn't about birthright, it was about character. The Zhuangzi embodied virtues like benevolence, righteousness, wisdom, and integrity. It's a lifelong journey, turning inward to refine the self. You may begin to reflect on your own learning, not just what you've read, but how you've grown. It's a philosophy of alignment, where everyone knows their place in the dance of society, creating a quiet, reliable harmony. You might find yourself straightening your posture, subtly responding to the calm discipline in the air. You've entered the realm of Confucius, the enduring scholar whose philosophy shaped Chinese civilization for centuries. Imagine a calm, thoughtful man observing the world with care, not seeking to escape it, but to refine it patiently, wisely, step by step. This new landscape is different stones arranged neatly, trees in measured rows, and in the distance, the gentle rhythm of a village humming with order. Though Confucius traveled widely, offering his teachings to rulers, he never gained real political power during his life. You pass a quiet courtyard where students once recited ancient texts. As sunlight warms your path, Confucius's teachings on the family come to mind. A common misunderstanding is that Confucian ritual is rigid or lifeless. You arrive at a small, tidy garden, each plant carefully placed. There's a story where Confucius, when asked about the afterlife, replied, "Respect the spirits, but keep them at a distance." During his time, Confucius debated with thinkers from other schools, Taoists, legalists, mohists, each offering a different path for society. As the day draws to a close, the sky glows in warm orange. A feeling of quiet responsibility settles over you. There is comfort in this philosophy. No rush, no shortcuts, only steady cultivation. You learn that the classical Confucian education included the 6 arts: ritual, music, archery, charioteering, calligraphy, and mathematics. As stars begin to appear, soft and orderly in the darkening sky, you feel a sense of belonging to a lineage of learning, to a society built on respect, to something larger than yourself. You carry with you now the image of a quiet classroom, the soft voice of a teacher, the gentle order of a life well lived. The ordered garden of Confucius gradually fades into a softer, more welcoming landscape. The air here hums with a quiet optimism, a sense of gentle renewal. These are seeds of benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom. Like young plants, they require nurturing to grow. For Mencius, evil isn't inherent. It arises from neglect, poor environment, or social corruption. His message offers a deeply hopeful view that within each person lies the potential for goodness. If you feel ashamed for one misstep, can you bring that sense of righteousness to all your actions? This extension of innate virtue was the root of both personal growth and just governance. A true ruler, he argued, should care for the people as a parent cares for their children, with empathy and responsibility. You have now entered the world of Mencius, a philosopher who believed not just in social harmony, but in the inherent goodness of the human heart. A king who lost the mandate of heaven, the moral right to rule, was no longer a true king. Mencius taught that even the cruelest rulers weren't beyond redemption. He believed in appealing to the better nature of others, trusting that kindness could awaken kindness in return. This belief wasn't naive, it was transformative. Instead of abstract rules, he spoke in images: a tree growing tall, a well about to be fallen into, a parent protecting a child. His teachings were not only wise, but beautifully human. You can imagine him in lively debate, not arguing to win, but to awaken. It asked not for perfection, but for patience, care, and courage in nurturing the good. This setting echoes another key belief: moral development requires material security. That's the essence of Mencius's philosophy: to believe in others and in yourself. To see character not as fixed, but as a garden always capable of growth. Mencius's wisdom leaves behind not commandments, but encouragement. He whispers not of judgment, but of potential. You carry with you now the image of the sprouting seed, the open heart, and the belief that, with care, goodness will grow. It's not about forcing morality, but watering the sprouts within you, every day. Mencius argued that people need food, shelter, and rest before they can truly cultivate virtue. A benevolent government, therefore, must care for its people's basic needs. It's a practical, even modern idea that morality cannot flourish in desperation. The journey continues, now with a gentle optimism and a renewed sense of possibility rooted in the deep, living soil of the benevolent heart. You may feel a quiet recognition, how hard it is to be your best self when simply surviving takes all your strength. This radical idea placed moral authority in the hands of the people, not the throne. Mencius replied that true strength came not from riches or force, but from the people's loyalty earned through kindness and justice. His concern for people's everyday lives grounded his philosophy in reality. Historians still examine how his practical advice might have improved conditions had it been fully embraced in his time. A ruler loved by his people would be strong without coercion. It's a vision of leadership still relevant today, where moral integrity outweighs fear or domination. For his time, it was a bold claim hinting at a kind of moral sovereignty rooted in virtue, not power. Historians note that this concept later influenced various uprisings and reform movements throughout Chinese history. He passionately defended Confucian ideals against the strict punishments of legalism and the abstract logic of Mohism. Unlike Confucius, Mencius was often more assertive, even boldly critiquing kings. His influence helped shape Confucianism's rise as the guiding philosophy of later dynasties. A lesser-known story often told is that of Mencius's mother, who moved house 3 times to find the right environment for her son's moral growth, a symbol of how surroundings shape virtue. Imagine a passionate, kind-eyed scholar walking through villages and palaces alike, seeking not control but compassion. These scenes reflect Mencius's example of seeing a child about to fall into a well is proof that compassion is instinctive. Such a reaction isn't about reward or reputation. It's a spontaneous expression of humanity. This idea urges you to look within and recognize the moments you've acted out of instinctive care, without thinking proof that goodness is already in you. As you walk, the sight of new leaves and tender green shoots evokes Mencius's most cherished belief, that all people are born with the 4 sprouts of virtue beginnings of compassion, shame, respect, and moral discernment. During the Warring States period, Mencius traveled from court to court, debating with rulers and rival philosophers. As you pass a vibrant village, you notice small moments of kindness. A child sharing a toy, an elder helped across a path. But Mencius didn't stop there. He believed these feelings must be extended outward. If you feel compassion for one child, can you feel it for all? Surprisingly, Mencius also held that if a ruler failed in this duty, he could be overthrown. You now find yourself in a wide, fertile field, brimming with crops. One of Mencius's most well-known debates was with King Hui of Liang, who sought to expand wealth and power. Mencius wasn't just a thinker. He proposed concrete policies too, advocating for tax reform, sustainable agriculture, and education. As the sun begins to dip low, casting golden light across the land, you feel a sense of gentle warmth, a deepening understanding of human connection. You might reflect on moments in your own life where someone's belief in you helped you grow. Mencius's speech style was also notable. He used parables and vivid analogies, making his ideas easy to grasp and hard to forget. As twilight settles and stars begin to appear, the evening feels full of quiet promise. His philosophy is an invitation to nurture your innate compassion, to extend it outward, and to believe that even in a chaotic world, humanity can flourish. The gentle optimism of Mencius's flourishing sprouts gradually gives way to a more rugged, disciplined landscape. The air here feels crisp, almost bracing, like the scent of freshly turned earth, or the quiet echo of practiced repetition. You are now stepping into the world of Zhuangzi, a philosopher grounded in order, realism, and effort. While deeply rooted in the Confucian tradition, Zhuangzi offered a starkly different view. Human nature is not good by default, and virtue must be cultivated through discipline, ritual, and education. Zhuangzi made a sharp distinction between what is natural raw desires, instincts, and what is cultivated virtue, reason, discipline. He favored the cultivated. Civilization for him was humanity's triumph over nature. This reflects Zhuangzi's faith in human ingenuity, that we can build institutions, laws, and structures strong enough to withstand our inner chaos. Without these structures, he warned, society would collapse into conflict and competition. It's a clear-eyed, perhaps sobering, view of the human condition, one that doesn't assume virtue but demands it be earned. Zhuangzi taught that even if humans begin with selfish instincts, we are also capable of deliberate self-transformation. Zhuangzi's idea of the rectification of names, ensuring that people live up to the responsibilities implied by their titles, is relevant even today. A parent, a leader, a teacher, each role demands more than a name. It requires moral performance. The key is commitment, not relying on fleeting emotions, but on habit, repetition, and discipline. Music, when harmonized and properly performed, could align people's emotions and encourage social order. Like ritual, music refined passion and channeled it toward virtue. You might even imagine the steady rhythm of ceremonial drums, meant not to entertain, but to tune the soul to the rhythms of a well-ordered world. Historians often note how his view of music echoed but expanded on Confucius's, turning aesthetics into moral cultivation. This doesn't deny potential. It just insists that potential must be shaped with care. A wild forest may be beautiful, but a cultivated garden reflects purpose and refinement. Zhuangzi's philosophy is not about spontaneity or trust in instinct. It's about refinement, discipline, and deliberate transformation. It asks not who you are, but who you're willing to become through effort. The structured path continues, urging you to cultivate what is best through constant, mindful action. Similarly, the moral person is not born but made through training, correction, and constant care. He built structured, reasoned arguments to support his views. Zhuangzi's wisdom is not gentle or indulgent. It is clear-eyed, disciplined, and hopeful in its own way. He believed that we can be better, not because it is easy, but because we are capable of learning, practicing, and striving. His message is not a promise of effortless virtue, but an invitation to build it, step by step, habit by habit. He wasn't trying to mystify, he wanted to persuade. His prose, though less metaphorical, is filled with moral urgency. It's not designed to lull, it's designed to awaken you to the seriousness of self-cultivation. As you walk, the surroundings change neatly trimmed hedges, solid fences, and careful construction. A sage isn't someone with divine intuition, but one who overcomes their flaws through study, ritual, and ethical practice. It is a far cry from the Taoist uncarved block or Mencius as benevolent king, its leadership as moral discipline. He famously said, "Why not nourish its creatures and regulate them, rather than contemplate it?" For him, virtue was not about pleasing the cosmos, but about practical wisdom, planning, and active cultivation. It was a secular ethics far ahead of its time. Historians often contrast Zhuangzi's rigorous model of rulership with the more intuitive or spontaneous approaches of other schools. It's a world shaped by intention, echoing Zhuangzi's central belief: left unchecked, human desires would lead to disorder. His observations of political chaos and selfish rulers confirmed his belief in the flaws of human nature. This perfectly reflects Zhuangzi's belief in transformation. Just as wood must be steamed and straightened, or jade carefully polished, so must human nature be shaped. The li, or ritual propriety, was more than ceremony for Zhuangzi. It was the grindstone of the soul, the structure that allowed people to restrain their base impulses and grow into virtuous citizens. He believed rituals don't express virtue, they produce it. Unlike Mencius, who believed in moral sprouts, Zhuangzi believed in the need for constant pruning. Although he was a Confucian, his ideas intersected with legalism too of his students. Han Fei and Li Si would go on to shape legalist thought. Historians still debate, was Zhuangzi a Confucian reformer or a bridge to authoritarian control? For him, society and morality aren't natural outgrowths of human instinct. They are artificial achievements, forged through continuous labor and the imposition of structure. Character isn't found, it is built. There's something sobering, even grounding, in this view. It reminds you that growth often comes not from ease, but from effort. During the turbulent Warring States period, Zhuangzi's realism took shape. The path brings you past a workshop where artisans sculpt raw materials into elegant forms. As you continue, a sense of responsibility settles in. Unlike the romantic visions of sages who act effortlessly, Zhuangzi's ideal ruler is one who works relentlessly on themselves. You soon arrive at a sturdy bridge, spanning a rapid river symbolizing human will, overcoming nature's force. Zhuangzi also rejected mystical explanations of morality. Unlike those who believed in heaven's will or divine mandates, Zhuangzi saw heaven as impersonal, operating through natural laws. His writing, too, reflects this clarity. Where Laozi was poetic and Zhuangzi playful, Zhuangzi was systematic, direct, and argumentative. At midday, the sun casts sharp, well-defined shadows, and you feel a new appreciation for structure. You might start to notice how rules and structures in your own life have provided clarity, how the very boundaries you sometimes resist are the ones that support you. And yet, Zhuangzi was not all sternness. He believed in music as a tool for moral development. As the day softens and light filters through the leaves, you feel a quiet resolve. You carry with you now the image of the sharpened blade, the straightened wood, the finely tuned instrument. The disciplined contours of Zhuangzi's cultivated landscape begin to soften, giving way to an open, purposeful vista. The air here carries a different energy, brisk, urgent, filled with a quiet conviction. You are now stepping into the world of Laozi, founder of Moism, a philosophical school that once rivaled Confucianism in influence. But for practical action, especially their defensive military expertise, when cities were under threat, Mohists would often arrive to reinforce walls, build countermeasures, and repel attacks, never to conquer, only to protect. Laozi's philosophy cuts through sentiment and ceremony, insisting on tangible benefit. His vision was clear. If all people practiced impartial care, the very foundations of violence would collapse. Rulers who loved their people impartially would rule wisely. Citizens who treated strangers with equal regard would live peacefully. It is a compelling idea. A world run on compassion, not competition. His focus was never abstract. It was always on how to reduce suffering and increase equity. They stood as moral engineers, applying knowledge in service of peace. Their communities functioned almost like disciplined brotherhoods, with strict organization and shared labor, committed to practical, ethical outcomes. But Laozi believed that through practice, individuals could learn to widen their circle of concern. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but steadily. Laozi claimed that heaven rewards those who practice universal love and punishes those who act selfishly. For Laozi, economic stability was essential to moral society. He advocated for agricultural reform, population growth, and efficient resource use. A state, he believed, could not flourish if its people were hungry or insecure. His was an early version of social planning, grounded in compassion rather than control. Every policy, every structure, every task must serve the greatest good for the greatest number. This belief served as both divine reassurance and social reinforcement. While Zhuangzi turned away from the supernatural, and Confucius remained cautious, Laozi welcomed it as a partner in moral enforcement. Historians still discuss whether these beliefs were sincerely held or strategically used to guide public behavior, but either way, they offered a cosmic anchor for ethical living. Historians still debate the internal structure of these groups, but their coordinated impact remains clear. Imagine a practical, devoted thinker, his gaze steady and direct, convinced that the world could be improved not through ritual or introspection, but through universal love and collective benefit. Laozi viewed aggressive conquest as the gravest moral failure, one that created suffering, drained resources, and violated the core principle of universal love. He wasn't against defense, but strongly condemned invasion and ambition. His followers would travel to mediate disputes or support weaker cities in resisting stronger attackers. Their commitment was not just to theory, but to applied ethics acting in the world to prevent harm. As you walk, you notice communities working side by side, sharing resources, helping with daily tasks, building and repairing with common purpose. This sense of mutual cooperation reflects Laozi's core doctrine, Jian'ai, or universal love. Unlike Confucianism, which promotes a tiered system of affection first family, then society, Laozi argued that love should be equal and impartial, extended to all, regardless of relationship. This perfectly illustrates Laozi's utilitarian mindset. He believed every action and policy should be evaluated by its benefit to the many. Does it increase peace, food, security? If not, it's waste. For this reason, Laozi criticized Confucian rituals, grand funerals, and long mourning practices as extravagant and socially harmful. Why invest time and resources in symbolism, he argued, when people are starving and cities remain unfortified? His was a stark, purpose-driven ethic, almost like a moral engineer calculating returns on virtue. You are called to love a stranger as you love a sibling. It's a radical, deeply egalitarian concept, one that invites admiration and perhaps a bit of discomfort. It challenges your instincts to prioritize the familiar, to love in circles rather than lines. This universal care was not theoretical for Laozi. During the Warring States period, his followers were renowned not just for philosophy. Further down the path, you pass a busy construction site orderly, efficient, and communal. You may find yourself reconsidering the habits and customs in your own life. How many of them actually contribute to well-being? And how many persist out of tradition? To Laozi, the root of conflict lay in partiality, loving your own group more than others. Wars, thefts, exploitation, all emerged from this imbalance. Interestingly, Mohism also embraced a deep belief in heaven, not as a mystical force, but as a moral authority. The road brings you now to a full granary abundant, orderly, sustaining. A cornerstone of his political thought was opposition to offensive warfare. While Mohist ideals may seem simple, their logic and argumentation were remarkably advanced. Laozi and his followers developed rigorous reasoning, forming one of the earliest systematic schools of logical analysis in China. Unlike the poetic musings of Laozi or the metaphorical wisdom of Zhuangzi, Mohist texts were structured, clear, and sharply reasoned. Sadly, many of their writings were lost over time, but what survives reveals a movement deeply committed to rational ethics. As the sun reaches its peak and light floods the path ahead, you feel a deep clarity, an invitation to simplify, to act with intention, to love widely. Laozi's philosophy insists on results. If a policy or action doesn't reduce harm or increase well-being, it should be abandoned. It's a refreshingly honest, almost urgent moral vision. Do what works and works for everyone. You might feel challenged by this clarity. Impartial care isn't easy. It pushes against your instincts, your habits, your loyalties. A unique feature of Mohism was the principle of identifying with the superior, not as blind loyalty, but as moral alignment. Leaders should embody the will of heaven and the principles of universal love, and the people should align with those principles. It created a kind of ethical hierarchy based not on birth, but on moral merit and communal purpose. You can almost imagine Laozi as a reformer, crafting a society where everyone from ruler to farmer lives by the same clear code: love all, benefit all, harm none. As evening arrives and softens the horizon, a sense of earnest purpose lingers. Laozi's philosophy is not gentle poetry or quiet introspection. It is a call to action. It demands clarity, compassion, and the courage to act not for the few, but for the many. You carry forward the image of shared labor, equal concern, and the unshakable belief that we can build a better world, not through sentiment, but through applied, impartial love. The path of Mohism continues clear, direct, and utterly committed to the moral logic of the common good. The earnest call for universal love slowly fades, giving way to a landscape defined by clarity, precision, and control. The air here feels sharp and metallic, like the edge of a forged blade. Everything reflects Han Fei's belief that humans are naturally self-interested, seeking gain and avoiding pain. Therefore, they cannot be ruled by appeals to morality or love, but only by Fa, a system of clear, enforced laws. Here, Han Fei's three pillars of government come to life: Fa, Shu, and Shi. He saw Confucian benevolence as wishful thinking, unsuited to the turbulent times. Reverence for ancient sages, in his view, blinded rulers to present realities. It's like tearing up the old instruction manual and engineering new systems from scratch. This radical flexibility helped Qin as meteoric rise, but may also have contributed to its inability to build lasting loyalty. It promoted meritocracy. Those who performed well, regardless of birth, could rise. Han Fei's clarity is unrelenting. He saw governance not as an art or a moral exercise, but a calculated science. How often have firm rules helped you stay on track? How often has unclear guidance caused failure? The state, he argued, should empty the people's minds and fill their bellies. Intellectual exploration, independent philosophy, even poetry, were seen as threats. If people began to think for themselves, they might question the laws. Better to feed them, occupy them, and silence dissent. You can almost hear the hush in this landscape, a world run by control, not conversation. Legalism presses that point hard. If it works, it's right. If it doesn't, discard it. It's ruthlessly pragmatic. Good government came not from the ruler's character, but from systems that work regardless of character. It's not about trust. It's about reliability. Han Fei believed this was the only honest way to govern imperfect humans. Left unchecked, people steal, lie, and rebel. But with strict laws and predictable outcomes, peace is possible. His vision may be stark, but it delivers results. Laws, at least in theory, applied to all equally. This challenged the old aristocratic systems and rewarded competence. Historians continue to debate whether this meritocratic aspect redeemed some of legalism's harsher tendencies. In a world of war and ambition, only laws with teeth could protect order. In legalism, agriculture and the military were the twin engines of state power. There is no warmth in this philosophy, but there is order. There is no space for compassion, but there is security. You carry with you the image of the unbending law, the silent court, and the iron discipline of a state built on principle, not personality. Scholars, merchants, and artists were seen as distractions, often discouraged or suppressed. His philosophy invites you to ask, how far should a society go to preserve order? And at what cost? The path of legalism continues unadorned, uncompromising, and always precise. A good citizen worked the land or defended the borders. Individual ambition was redirected toward the collective goals of the state. The result? Control, predictability, and output. But the cost was freedom, intellectual, emotional, and personal. People don't act out of morality, he argued. They act because it benefits them. It's a philosophy rooted in hard realism, with little patience for human ideals. You may find it unsettling, but also honest, especially when recalling situations where only rules, not intentions, produced results. Laws must be public, written, and enforced without exception, from peasant to minister. Xu ensures rulers control their officials through hidden strategies, preventing corruption. She ensures power lies in the office, not the individual, making governance impersonal and resistant to favoritism or rebellion. Citizens were not to reason, debate, or interpret. They were to follow. This stripped away moral autonomy in favor of societal cohesion. It's a sobering concept, a world where laws define ethics and questioning becomes subversion. The aim was to create a system where no one, not even the ruler, governed by whim, but by method. If laws are predictable and impartial, and rewards and punishments are strictly applied, people will act in ways that benefit the state. It's a vision that feels cold but undeniably efficient. You are now entering the philosophical domain of Han Fei, the leading voice of legalism, a school of thought focused not on virtue or compassion, but on structure, order, and state power. Imagine a brilliant strategist, analytical and severe, convinced that the only path to stability lies in law and enforcement, not sentiment or tradition. As you walk, the world becomes streamlined straight roads, unadorned buildings, and total efficiency. A crucial moment in Chinese history validated this view: the unification of China under the Qin dynasty in 221 BCE, led by Emperor Qin Shi Huang and advised by Li Si, a student of both Zhuangzi and Han Fei. The dynasty used legalist methods to impose order across a fragmented land. From standardized weights to a central bureaucracy, legalist policies brought rapid unity. Yet, this very system also carried seeds of collapse. The dynasty's harshness bred resentment, and it fell just 15 years later. Tragically, Han Fei himself died in prison, accused by Li Si, showing that even his clear logic could not escape human treachery. The path brings you past austere courthouses, silent and imposing. Han Fei rejected the idea that virtue could lead a nation. Unlike Confucians, Han Fei dismissed tradition. The past is not a blueprint, he wrote. Circumstances evolve, and new laws must adapt. Now the path widens into vast, ordered farmlands, clean, geometric rows worked by a quiet, disciplined population. Han Fei went further, rejecting even private morality. He believed personal notions of right and wrong led to dissent. The only acceptable standard was the law. Yet not all elements of legalism were oppressive. In some ways, it was ahead of its time. As the light hardens into late afternoon, shadows fall long and straight. You might find yourself reflecting on your own need for structure. A particularly chilling element of Han Fei's thought is his belief in controlling thought itself. Yet legalism wasn't mindless tyranny. It was systematized, consistent, and rational. As the sky darkens into evening, and the world around you glows in hues of deep, unforgiving blue, you feel the undeniable pull of Han Fei's logic. Han Fei's legacy is not one of comfort. It is a mirror held up to power, a challenge to idealism, and a warning about the limits of trust. The cold precision of legalism slowly fades, and the landscape around you begins to shimmer with life and variety. The air now hums with intellectual energy, as if ideas themselves were carried on the breeze. Under ancient trees, philosophers debate with passion and respect. Scribes copy bamboo scrolls, preserving insights and sharing them across kingdoms. You recall the Confucians, who emphasized moral cultivation, ritual, and family hierarchy. The Mohists, led by Mozi, offered a radical message: universal love and impartial care for all. They rejected hierarchy and affection, and criticized elaborate rituals and aggressive warfare. The school of names explored logic and language with surprising sophistication. They debated paradoxes, dissected the nature of words and reality, and pushed the boundaries of thought. Though politically marginal, their work on logic was deeply influential, resembling the inquiries of ancient Greek sophists or logicians. It extended into military thought, most famously with Sun Tzu, author of The Art of War. Though not a philosopher in the strict sense, his Taoist-influenced treatise emphasizes strategy, flexibility, and the value of winning without conflict. His insights shaped both military and philosophical thinking for centuries and remain relevant even today. Their communities were disciplined, practical, and even developed expertise in defensive engineering to help the weak resist stronger attackers. Despite the wars, this was an age where the human mind rose to meet chaos with creativity. The whispers of the era linger not as relics, but as invitations to stay curious, to listen deeply, and to recognize that truth is often found not in a single answer, but in the dialogue between many. The 100 schools weren't merely academic. They were answers to crisis, blueprints for survival. In their diversity, they showed a belief that truth is multifaceted and that wisdom is born from open discourse, not dogma. Their ideas laid the foundation for traditional Chinese medicine and cosmology. Still resonate today. Though the answers differ, the core inquiries remain timeless. It is as if these thinkers laid the intellectual foundations that still support much of East Asian civilization and even broader global questions about ethics and governance. Not far off were the agriculturalists, who envisioned a society built on simple communal farming, where even rulers tilled the fields. These private philosophers often preserved the most daring ideas, unbound by state ideology. The Hundred Schools is not a single philosophy, but a chorus of voices, each offering a lens on life. It's a landscape of pluralism, debate, and courage, born from chaos, but pointing toward harmony. Picture them writing by candlelight, ideas spreading from small villages to distant capitals, ripples of thought crossing centuries. Historians credit this intellectual independence as a reason why so much philosophical richness survived, even amid censorship and shifting regimes. Their philosophy was radical in its anti-elitism, an early model of sustainable, egalitarian living. Their ideal was the Zhuangzi, a noble person who leads by example. Confucians critiqued mohist universal love as unrealistic, arguing that love must begin within the family. Legalists mocked Confucian morality as naive, insisting only laws could secure order. Taoists rejected all striving, mocking both virtue and punishment, encouraging a return to nature. This dynamic interplay sharpened each school's identity. It was less a battleground and more a refining fire, where ideas grew stronger through friction. Human nature, they claimed, was self-serving. Only through clear, enforced laws and strict punishment could society function. They viewed virtue as unreliable and preferred rules over rulers, systems over sentiment. Their philosophy, though severe, contributed to the unification of China under the Qin dynasty. Then there were the Taoists, like Laozi and Zhuangzi, who championed simplicity, spontaneity, and harmony with the natural order. Their concept of wu-wei, or non-action, wasn't passivity, but alignment with the flow of life. While often seen in contrast, these two schools also complemented one another: ritual and spontaneity, form and freedom. There's a shared urgency, a sense that these thinkers were responding to a world in crisis, where endless warfare and fragmentation demanded new answers. Each school believed it had the key to restore harmony. It feels like a great intellectual gathering, with the prize not wealth or fame, but the salvation of civilization. Yu Wei arrived at the heart of the Hundred Schools of Thought, a golden era of Chinese philosophy that flourished during the spring. In this environment, no single orthodoxy could dominate. Philosophers, whether Confucian, Taoist, legalist, or otherwise, were free to develop competing visions. Interestingly, these schools weren't formal institutions, but networks of teachers and disciples, moving from court to court, teaching, advising, and debating. Today, historians piece together their stories from scattered texts, as much of their personal history remains a mystery. And autumn and warring states periods, from roughly the 8th to the 3rd century BCE. Imagine a bustling open forum, not of marble and columns, but of minds. One defining feature of this time was political fragmentation. Competing states, desperate for stability, sought advice from wandering scholars. The path leads you through a metaphorical garden, where each philosophical tradition is like a different species of plant, distinct in shape, scent, and purpose. As you explore further, the diversity becomes more striking. In stark contrast, the legalists, represented most sharply by Han Fei, rejected moral appeals altogether. Alongside these major schools were lesser-known thinkers and traditions. The path soon brings you to a symbolic crossroads. You encounter the school of yin-yang, which emphasized the cosmic balance of opposites light and dark, active and passive. These schools did not operate in isolation. They debated, challenged, and responded to one another constantly. A curious fact is that this intellectual explosion wasn't limited to moral or political philosophy. As the sun climbs high, lighting the entire landscape, you feel a quiet awe. You may pause and reflect. The questions they asked: what is justice? How should we live? What is human nature? A little-known yet vital feature of this period was the independent scholar. While many sought royal patronage, others preferred autonomy, teaching and writing beyond court politics. As afternoon light softens into gold The atmosphere feels alive with possibility. You leave with the image of debating sages, diligent scribes, and bold ideas etched into bamboo. The philosophical journey continues, led by the enduring legacy of the thinkers who dared to ask, to disagree, and to dream. The vibrant echoes of the 100 schools gradually quiet, not into silence, but into harmony. The voices of debate, persuasion, and contradiction fade into something more elemental, more fluid. Imagine standing by a riverbank, watching the water glide around rocks. There's no struggle, only flow. The world is not divided into rigid categories, but exists in interconnected, transforming pairs. One becomes the other, and both are always present. The air shifts. It becomes soft, balanced, and rhythmic, like a tide rising and falling. Over time, these simple observations evolved into a profound cosmology, shaping medicine, politics, metaphysics, and even art. While the words may have changed across centuries, the principle remains timeless. You've entered the subtle, ever-present realm of yin and yang, one of the most enduring and fundamental ideas in Chinese thought. Beneath, fish move silently. On the surface, trees and sky are reflected perfectly. This is not stillness as stagnation, but stillness alive with subtle motion. These are not just substances, but phases of energy, each interacting with yin and yang. Together, they create a complex web used to explain seasons, directions, bodily organs, emotional tendencies, and political patterns. In this system, everything is connected, not just in concept, but in practice. The contrast is striking, yet neither side feels superior. They are two halves of the same landscape. In Chinese painting and calligraphy, space is just as important as form. Where are you overextended? Where have you withdrawn? A way of seeing the world not in terms of winners and losers, success and failure, but in shifting relationships, necessary contrasts, and flowing energies. In a world full of extremes, the wisdom of balance may be the most radical thing of all. The breath in, the breath out, the pause, the movement. Yin and yang suggest that neither action nor rest is superior, only that they must be kept in motion, like tides or seasons. Health, happiness, and insight emerge when we live in tune with this rhythm. The empty areas speak as powerfully as the inked strokes. There's a serenity here, not of perfection, but of natural coherence. Everything belongs. Even conflict, even change. Instead, it suggests that wisdom arises from attentive living, observing the patterns of the world, responding appropriately, and staying balanced. It doesn't demand asceticism or excess. It asks only that you live with awareness of how things rise and fall. Yin and yang do not erase pain or remove uncertainty, but they offer a way to move with them rather than against them. The viewer is invited to participate, to imagine, to feel what lies beyond the image. It is art that breathes. Even Chinese gardens reflect this balance between stone and water, structure and openness, stillness and sound. Without the shade, we would not notice the warmth. Without the brightness, the shadow would have no depth. Yin and yang teach us to embrace both joy and sorrow, effort and surrender, presence and absence, all as part of the whole. Yin and yang are not fixed states, but flowing energies turning, circling, always transforming. The sky becomes a canvas of deepening contrasts, light fading into darkness, warmth giving way to cool. You feel a soft gratitude, a sense of being part of a greater pattern. You remember that yin and yang are not ideas to be mastered, but truths to be lived. The longest night contains the first light of dawn. When joy becomes overwhelming, it may turn to sadness. And from grief, healing eventually emerges. This insight offers not just wisdom, but comfort. It teaches that nothing lasts forever, not pain, not ecstasy. Everything turns, and in time, balance returns. This is what gives life its shape and its story. You start to notice it in yourself too, how after long activity, your body longs for rest. How after silence, you feel ready to speak. One always prepares the way for the other. Unlike formal philosophies that instruct how to live or govern, yin and yang offer a way of seeing a descriptive framework for understanding nature, change, and relationship. The Art of War by Sun Tzu doesn't often name yin and yang directly, but the wisdom is there. Knowing when to strike and when to retreat, when to move like fire and when to wait like shadow. Strategy, like nature, depends not on constant force, but on timing, flexibility, and awareness. Too much yang might manifest as fever or agitation. Excess yin might appear as fatigue or coldness. Treatments aim not to suppress symptoms, but to restore dynamic equilibrium, using herbs, acupuncture, and energy movement. The body is understood as a microcosm of the cosmos, and healing means returning it to natural rhythm. As you walk beneath tall trees, you notice how the sunlight filters through leaves, casting dappled shadows across your path. On one side, there's warmth and brightness. On the other, coolness and shade. Inhale and exhale. Effort and rest. Speaking and listening. There's no need to eliminate one to embrace the other. True harmony arises when both are in balance. This idea forms the root of many practices in Chinese tradition. Yin is the dark, the inward, the passive, the feminine, the moon. Yang is the light, the outward, the active, the masculine, the sun. But they aren't opposites in conflict. Instead, they are complementary, like the two sides of a coin, each giving meaning to the other. Yin contains a seed of yang. Yang carries the potential for yin. Life is not a straight line. It's a cycle, a pulse, a rhythm. You begin to notice the dance of these forces everywhere, in the alternation of day and night, in the seasons, in your own breath. In traditional Chinese medicine, for instance, illness is often seen as an imbalance between yin and yang within the body. Historians believe that the idea of yin and yang began as early agricultural observations, cycles of light and dark, wet and dry, seed and harvest. You now pass a still pond, its surface like polished glass. Even in military thought, this principle finds quiet expression. The trail now climbs to a mountain pass, with one side glowing under sunlight and the other cloaked in cool shadow. A profound truth in this worldview is the idea of cyclical change. When one energy reaches its extreme, it transforms into its opposite. Another fascinating layer appears in the relationship between yin-yang and the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. As the afternoon stretches on, you begin to notice how this principle even shapes aesthetic expression. You may find yourself thinking of your own life, not just in terms of goals or achievements, but in patterns. The path now narrows into a gentle valley. The light softens. Birds move quietly overhead. One little discussed aspect of yin and yang is its quiet ethical influence. It teaches neither strict morality nor radical individualism. As evening approaches, the sun melts into the horizon. You walk on slowly, mindfully. You carry with you not a doctrine, but a lens. The whispers of yin and yang remain with you, not loud, not urgent, but quietly guiding, like the phases of the moon or the change of the tide. The harmonious dance of yin and yang gradually shifts, giving way to a deeper, more mysterious rhythm. The landscape now feels hushed, reflective, and filled with quiet symbols. The I Ching is built on 64 hexagrams, each formed by 6 horizontal lines that are either solid or broken. These lines combine in unique ways to represent every conceivable situation, mood, or moment in life. Everything is in motion. Every situation contains within it the seeds of its opposite. The I Ching holds a mirror to your current situation, not by telling you what will happen, but by illuminating how your thoughts, choices, and actions interact with unfolding conditions. It encourages introspection. Often, the insight it gives is less about the outcome and more about your attitude and your role in the movement of things. While it reflects existing tendencies and the current flow of forces, it also emphasizes choice. The lines of each hexagram can be changing or static, showing what might shift and what remains. This reminds us that while some elements of life are beyond our control, others are within our influence, particularly our character, our timing, and our alignment with the moment. Instead of seeing difficulty as failure, it frames it as part of a cycle, something that contains the seed of eventual transformation. Whether using euro stocks or coins, the act requires focus, sincerity, and clarity of intent. The I Ching whispers that to live well is not to fight change, but to move wisely with it, to read the signs, listen inwardly, and respond with care. In this ancient text, you've encountered not fixed truth, but a living wisdom, one that guides not with answers, but with ever-deepening insight into the movement of life itself. It's not a quick fix, but a meditative moment that draws you inward. The more honest and open your question, the deeper the reflection. In this sense, the I Ching acts not just as an oracle, but as a teacher of mindfulness, teaching you to approach even uncertainty with presence and grace. In this way, it offers a subtle form of hope, not in magical intervention, but in the understanding that everything evolves, and every moment, even painful ones, have their place in the unfolding whole. It reminds us that what feels like an ending may be the preparation for a new beginning. It teaches that integrity and attentiveness are forms of power. You might recall a moment when, in a difficult time, your shift in mindset, not external events, brought clarity and change. Had it not been, much of its wisdom might have vanished forever. Ironically, its survival allowed future thinkers, from Confucians to Taoists, to modern strategists and Zhuangzi psychologists, to explore its depths. Carl Jung, for example, admired the I Ching as a tool for understanding the unconscious and saw it as an early model of synchronicity, where meaning emerges not from linear cause, but from the resonance between inner and outer events. The hexagrams don't represent fixed states, but processes, offering insight into where you are in a cycle of change and what forces are at play. You begin to understand that the I Ching is not just a book, but a mode of perception. It encourages a way of seeing life as a flowing system of relationships, where everything is in dialogue and where the wise act with awareness rather than impulse. It invites patience, humility, and attentiveness. Its hexagrams can speak as clearly to a king making decisions of state as to a solitary person trying to understand a dream. Each hexagram and line has a numerical value tied to yin and yang, as well as the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. The trigrams were also associated with directions, family roles, body parts, and seasons, creating a web of interconnection between personal, societal, and cosmic forces. It's not just a book of symbols, but a framework for seeing unity in multiplicity, patterns in chaos. In this way, the I Ching encourages you to stop resisting change and instead align yourself with it. It teaches that wise living means sensing the direction of the wind and adjusting your sails, rather than trying to control the sea. By casting coins or euro stocks, a hexagram is produced, revealing insight about your current path. This isn't magic, but a prompt for reflection, a kind of poetic algorithm. You might feel the same sensation as when someone asks you just the right question at the right time, helping you see your own situation more clearly. This living display mirrors one of the I Ching's most subtle teachings, that truth is multi-perspectival. Each hexagram can be interpreted from several angles. Many have mirror images or inverses, showing that every position in life contains alternatives and reversals. There's no one correct view, only deeper clarity. The book doesn't offer answers in the traditional sense, but rather prompts you to see more clearly, to hold multiple truths at once. Every falling leaf, Each ripple across a pond seems to carry coded meaning. You've entered the realm of the I Ching, or Book of Changes, one of the oldest and most revered texts in Chinese thought. It doesn't offer rigid commands or dogma. Instead, it speaks in metaphors, symbols, and movement. It is not a roadmap to a fixed future, but a mirror of the present and a guide for navigating life's constant transformations. As you walk, you begin to notice patterns, branches splitting in twos, water flowing around stones, clouds forming and dissolving. Legend says that the origins of the I Ching lie with Fu Xi, the mythical sage who observed nature, heaven and earth, bird and beast, and created the 8 trigrams. Each trigram represents a fundamental force: heaven, earth, thunder, wind, water, fire, mountain, and lake. Later, King Wen of the Zhou dynasty is credited with combining the trigrams into 64 hexagrams while imprisoned. His son, the Duke of Zhou, added further interpretive texts. Still later, Confucius and his followers supposedly wrote commentaries known as the 10 Wings, which transformed the book from a manual of divination into a deep philosophical work. This layered authorship gives the text remarkable depth, speaking to many different kinds of people over centuries. The essence of the I Ching lies in its understanding of change, not just as something that happens, but as the underlying principle of reality. As you continue your walk, the connection between the outer world and your inner landscape becomes more apparent. Another fascinating detail is how the I Ching laid the groundwork for Chinese cosmology and numerology. You come upon a serene grove where the sunlight dances through leaves, forming ever-changing shadows. Importantly, the I Ching also maintains a delicate balance between fate and free will. One lesser-known historical detail is that the I Ching survived the Qin dynasty's book burnings precisely because it was classified as a tool for divination rather than subversive philosophy. As twilight settles in, the light softens, and the lines between beginning and ending blur. You might reflect on how the I Ching frames adversity. One curious feature of consulting the I Ching is the ritual process involved. As night gently arrives and stars begin to pierce the sky, you carry with you the image of broken and unbroken lines, of patterns moving across time. The subtle patterns of the I Ching dissolve like mist at dawn, giving way to a sharper, more defined landscape. The air grows denser here, charged not with mystery, but with calculation. Every shadow feels deliberate. Every breeze seems to carry intent. You've stepped from realms of harmony and metaphysical balance into something more focused, the territory of the strategists, or Bingja. Though often not listed alongside Confucians or Taoists, their impact on Chinese civilization is profound. Endless conflict created a demand not just for courage, but for brilliance. Kings and lords turned to thinkers who could see patterns others missed. Military might was no longer enough. To win was to outthink, outmaneuver, and outprepare. The unification of China under the Qin dynasty was as much a triumph of strategy as of steel. While legalism dictated law, it was the cold logic of the art of war that won fields and fortresses. He yields to pressure, only to return stronger. Rigidity leads to failure. Flexibility leads to survival. This responsiveness reflects a deeper principle: the art of action through stillness. The strategist waits, watches, moves with the flow, not against it. Victory comes not through domination, but through natural alignment with the moment. For them, wisdom meant application in war, governance, and survival. And at the center of their world stands a singular figure, Sun Tzu. Each is a variable, a force, a risk or advantage. This is holistic thinking. A battlefield is a system, not a stage. The strategist must know his own strengths and weaknesses as clearly as the enemy's. It teaches you how to see clearly, patiently, deeply, and in seeing, to act with wisdom. Without self-knowledge, all planning is guesswork. With it, even simple acts become powerful. The strategist does not seek conflict, but when it comes, he is ready. He doesn't rush. He doesn't panic. His strength lies in calm, in clarity, in knowing what to do when others falter. Sun Tzu doesn't offer comfort. He offers focus. The art of war is not just about defeating enemies. It is about conquering oneself fear, ego, doubt. Everything matters. Weather, morale, supply lines, even timing of rest. A great strategy isn't one bold stroke. It's 1,000 subtle alignments. Others suggest the book evolved over decades, refined through use. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, Sun Tzu said. Its wisdom informed imperial examination systems. It taught planning, resource management, and leadership. In the vast machinery of empire, the art of war was a quiet engine, its influence hidden in civil service, diplomacy, and policy. He was never just a general. His lessons spread far beyond the battlefield. In business, leaders cite his insights on competition. In politics, his guidance on deception and timing is still relevant. A watcher of patterns, a silent mover of pieces, the one who sees the board long before anyone else. The Art of War is not a book of violence. It is a book of restraint, of awareness, of mastery through insight. His vision centers on knowing oneself and one's opponent. If you know both, he wrote, you need not fear 100 battles. This is not bravado. It is clarity, the clarity that comes from total awareness. Defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. Preparation is not an afterthought. It is everything. Morale, intelligence, terrain, and timing are not accessories to war. They are the core. When they align, victory becomes inevitable. Regardless of its precise origin, the vision is remarkably consistent. And more importantly, it has endured because it transcends context. Its ideas apply wherever conflict exists. In war, in politics, in negotiation, even in personal relationships. Sun Tzu is more than a man. He is myth, memory, and method. His most enduring legacy is the art of war, not a mere military handbook, but a timeless guide to mastering conflict through strategy, perception, and discipline. As you step through this terrain, it begins to change in your eyes. Hills offer cover. It describes human nature as it is, not as it should be. It does not condemn emotion, but it demands mastery over it. All warfare is based on deception. Sun Tzu tells us not as cruelty, but as truth. In conflict, perception is power. Victory often belongs to the one who shapes the narrative, who controls what the enemy sees or thinks they see. Confrontation is failure's shadow. The best strategist never has to draw a weapon. Victory comes through understanding of self, of others, and of the shifting dynamics of the situation. You may recall moments in your own life when a problem dissolved not through force, but through careful, quiet navigation. In this way, the strategist is not a warrior, but an artist one who sketches plans, erases threats, and never wastes a single motion. Valleys hide movement. A still forest hums with potential ambush. The world becomes a battlefield of thought. And that is Sun Tzu's first lesson. Learn to see what others do not. He teaches that war is not to be taken lightly. It is a grave matter, a matter of life and death, and must be approached with calculation, not emotion. To subdue the enemy without fighting, he wrote, is the acme of skill. Victory, to Sun Tzu, is not glory in combat. It is achieved before the fight begins, through intelligence, foresight, deception, and preparation. The true battlefield is mental. The sword is the final tool, not the first. As you walk deeper into this philosophy, subtle truths emerge. The Warring States period was the crucible for these ideas. The origins of Sun Tzu and his text remain uncertain. Some scholars argue he was not one man, but a collective voice. You pass a silent training ground. Soldiers move with quiet discipline, every gesture precise. No chaos, here only readiness. The genius of Sun Tzu lies in the reach of his ideas. The art of war is grounded in realism. It offers no romantic ideals, no calls to honor. Yet beneath the precision lies a quiet softness echoes of Taoist thought. Sun Tzu's general, like water, adapts. From a high ridge, the world opens below. Hills, rivers, forests, and roads no longer appear neutral. And strategy, Sun Tzu insists, begins with the self. Arrogance is fatal. So is uncertainty. Many forget this book wasn't reserved for generals. For centuries, it was studied by bureaucrats, scholars, and administrators. It shaped governance and organization. As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the landscape, you feel the stillness of this philosophy settle around you. You walk onward, carrying an image of the strategist in your mind. Not a warrior, but a thinker. And this may be its greatest brilliance. It doesn't tell you what to do. The sharp, calculated world of the strategist dissolves into a space that feels ancient and ethereal, where the air carries the scent of damp earth and distant mountain mist. This atmosphere is filled with subtle energy, inviting you to see beyond the visible and embrace the unseen. Gnarled roots wind through moss-covered rocks, springs shimmer with light, and everything seems suspended in quiet harmony. Hermits, recluses, and wandering sages sought solitude in forests and mountains. It was believed that only in nature, far from worldly distractions, could one rediscover their original nature and harmonize with the Tao. The veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary seems thinner. Though often seen as literal, many scholars interpret this quest as symbolic of spiritual transcendence, freedom from the cycles of suffering and rebirth. Yet, historical records do describe efforts to create elixirs from minerals and herbs, sometimes with dangerous results. Over time, Taoist alchemy developed into two branches: external alchemy, involving substances. Hidden in mountain temples and remote hermitages, Taoist monks and sages studied astronomy, botany, medicine, and alchemy. Though not always part of official institutions, these reclusive scholars contributed to early Chinese science and philosophy, passing on insights through cryptic texts and oral teachings. And potions, an internal alchemy, focused on transforming body and spirit through inner practices. In this gentle twilight, you feel a deep quiet emerging within. The early Taoist mystics offer not commandments, but invitations. They urge you to listen inward, to sense the subtle flow of energy, to rest in the present moment without striving. In this stillness, connection with the Tao becomes possible. Taoist mystics believed the life force that animates all things could be harnessed, refined, and guided through the body. Taoism suggests these moments are not rare. They are your natural state, obscured only by noise and distraction. Instead, they point to inner experiences and transformations that defy rational description. The whispers of Taoist mysticism are quiet but enduring. They speak not of dogma, but of discovery, not of conquest, but of return. You carry with you the stillness of the meditating sage, the quiet bubbling of the spring, and the deep truth that the Tao is not elsewhere. It is within and all around you. This ambiguity is deliberate. The Tao, by its nature, cannot be fully grasped or explained. It must be lived and felt. The way back to harmony is not through effort, but through release. This scene reflects the Taoist principle of returning to simplicity. It is a journey not toward something new, but back to something forgotten, a gentle unfolding into the mystery that has always been there. Like a fruit falling at peak ripeness, spiritual transformation happens when the time is right, not when it is willed. This reflects the larger Taoist belief in non-action, or action in harmony with the flow of life. True mastery involves knowing when to act and when to yield. In a world burdened by complexity and artificiality, Taoism encourages stripping away excess to rediscover the original self. Naturalness is seen not as naivety, but as profound wisdom. To be simple is to be in tune with the way of things, to stop forcing and start flowing. It is a soft, quiet strength, effortless and enduring. Through breathwork, posture, and intention, practitioners aim to balance and enhance their ki, improving health and deepening awareness. This subtle energy became central not only to Taoist cultivation, but to broader Chinese traditions of healing and self-mastery. Stories of immortals living off dew and mountain air speak to this ideal. These seekers also practiced specific breathing techniques, early qigong, and observed dietary regimens to purify the body and cultivate internal energy known as Kai. These practices formed the roots of both traditional Chinese medicine and later internal martial arts. This natural setting reflects the Taoist belief that true understanding is experiential, not intellectual. By aligning with the Tao, the underlying force of all life, one could attain vitality, serenity, and even transcendence. Breathing becomes intentional. Every step becomes a meditation. You are entering the mystical realm of early Taoist spirituality, where seekers aimed not for social harmony or political mastery, but for a direct and profound union with the cosmic Tao. Here, the path is inward, marked by meditation, simplicity, and the pursuit of spiritual longevity. As you walk, your steps grow quieter, as if in respect for the deep stillness surrounding you. The landscape changes. Historically, this mystical pursuit often led Taoists away from society. The path leads to a quiet clearing where a solitary figure sits in silent meditation. This scene embodies the Taoist practice of sitting in forgetfulness, a form of meditation focused on emptying the mind. In this practice, one lets go of thoughts, desires, and even the sense of self, seeking a state where one is no longer separate from the Tao. Unlike focused meditation, this involves releasing all effort and identity. It is an invitation to simply be open, still, and present. Walking onward, you sense a subtle shift in perception. Another fascinating pursuit within Taoist mysticism was the search for immortality. You arrive at a natural spring, its water bubbling gently. A central idea in Taoist cultivation is spontaneous transformation. Although practices may be disciplined, their ultimate aim is to cultivate a state where change arises naturally, without force. In the margins of history, Taoist communities played a significant role in preserving ancient knowledge. As the light begins to fade, the sky glows softly. You may recall your own quiet moments of clarity, perhaps alone in nature or in silent reflection. Taoist mystical texts often use symbolic and poetic language. Terms like valley spirit or dark enigma do not translate into direct instruction. As night falls and stars emerge in the darkened sky, you feel part of something vast and timeless. This ancient path offers no guarantees, only the suggestion that true peace, true clarity, lies in aligning with the natural rhythms of life. The ethereal mists of Taoist mysticism slowly recede, giving way to a world defined by structure, tradition, and formality. The air here carries the quiet resonance of ritual and repetition, as if generations past still whisper through every movement and gesture. You are now entering the domain shaped by Confucian rites, known as Lia, living legacy of moral refinement and social harmony, deeply embedded in the fabric of Chinese civilization. Like stepping into a carefully choreographed performance, you begin to sense the graceful rhythm of a culture shaped by respect, hierarchy, and an enduring search for order. As you walk, you notice the deliberate grace in everyday moments. A bow between strangers, the balanced symmetry of a courtyard, the slow, mindful pace of daily rituals. Here, Li is not simply etiquette, is the moral language of society. Rooted in the teachings of Confucius and elaborated over centuries, these rites extend from intimate family ceremonies to grand imperial rituals. Each gesture, each word, is infused with intention. The repetition of these acts was believed to refine the character, training individuals in self-restraint, gratitude, and humility. Harmony was not an abstract goal, it was woven into the very fabric of communal life. A major historical turning point was during the Han Dynasty, when Confucianism became the state's official philosophy. From then on, mastery of the Confucian classics, particularly the study of Li, became essential for those who aspired to civil service. The imperial examination system transformed these teachings into a nationwide standard, creating a class of scholar officials trained not only in administration, but in moral cultivation. Over time, however, the spiritual essence of Li sometimes gave way to rigid formality. Later interpretations often emphasize the outer form of rituals, sometimes at the cost of their original moral depth. This tension between sincerity and surface performance remains a point of scholarly discussion even today. You pass an ancestral temple where the scent of incense hangs in the air. Here, ritual finds one of its most profound expressions, the honoring of ancestors. These ceremonies were not simply acts of remembrance. They reaffirmed one's place in the familial and social chain. The careful offerings, the bowed heads, the rhythmic chanting each element connects the living with the past, reinforcing loyalty, continuity, and gratitude. Ancestor worship, governed by Li, served as a binding force across generations. It shaped not just family structure, but the very values of society. Continuing your walk, you begin to recognize the depth of Li in everyday actions, the way one enters a room, the order in which people are served tea, the respectful silence maintained in conversation. All these seemingly small details reflect deep-seated ethical expectations. These patterns offered a roadmap for human interaction, ensuring that every role from parent to child, elder to youth, was fulfilled with clarity and dignity. It wasn't about restricting expression, but about creating space for thoughtful behavior and mutual respect. An intriguing aspect of Li is its intimate connection to music. Confucius taught that music and ritual were complementary forces. Music cultivated the inner self, while ritual shaped external conduct. Harmonious music was seen as a reflection of a harmonious society. Court music, ancestral hymns, and ceremonial performances all reinforced social order through tone, rhythm, and intention. Even today, scholars explore the psychological and cultural impacts of these ancient compositions, considering them not just artistic forms, but instruments of moral education. You now arrive at an imperial court scene, not a place of political intrigue, but of majestic ceremony. Here, Li took on cosmic significance. The emperor's role as the son of heaven was confirmed through elaborate rituals offerings to heaven and earth, seasonal sacrifices, and choreographed processions. These acts symbolized the alignment between human authority and the natural order. Through ritual, the emperor maintained legitimacy, and through participation, the people affirmed their collective harmony. Ritual here was not symbolic, it was constitutive of reality. Li was never static. As dynasties rose and fell, Confucian scholars continually revised and commented upon its meaning. These reinterpretations allowed Li to adapt to shifting political, social, and cultural conditions, even while maintaining its core emphasis on harmony and moral development. This ongoing dialogue made Confucianism a dynamic force, always rooted in tradition, but open to thoughtful evolution. It's a system that managed to stay both ancient and contemporary, sustained by its capacity to reflect the needs of each era. A fascinating detail, often overlooked, is the influence of Li on legal codes. While legalist thinkers emphasized strict laws and punishments, Confucianism sought to govern through virtue and example. Over time, however, the two merged. Moral expectations embedded in Li found their way into law, especially in cases involving family matters. Courts would often consider the ethical dimensions of a dispute, not just the legal facts. This fusion created a legal culture that prioritized social stability and relational harmony over abstract justice. As the sun lowers and sun shadows lengthen across carved stone pathways, you sense a quiet dignity in your surroundings. The teachings of Li encourage you to see meaning in small gestures: a bowed head, a shared meal, a moment of silence. These are not empty forms. When performed with sincerity, they become profound expressions of character. Confucius emphasized that ritual without heart was hollow, but when rooted in authenticity, it became the vessel for moral transformation. You might reflect on the unwritten customs in your own life, how handshakes, greetings, or family traditions subtly shape your world. These everyday rituals, often inherited unconsciously, offer structure and meaning. Confucian Li calls attention to such moments, encouraging mindfulness, respect, and presence. It suggests that civilization is built not through grand acts, but through the quiet consistency of respectful living. Consider the 5 relationships central to Confucian ethics: ruler and subject, parent and child, husband and wife, elder and younger sibling, and friend. Each relationship is governed by specific obligations and rituals. The performance of Li ensures that these roles are carried out not through dominance, but through mutual respect and reciprocal duty. Society, in this vision, is a web of relationships, held together by conscious practice and ethical sensitivity. As twilight settles, the landscape seems bathed in timeless calm. The rites may no longer be performed exactly as they once were, but their spirit endures. In every respectful interaction, in every thoughtful gesture, you can feel the legacy of Li. Confucian rites are not relics of the past, they are living echoes, quietly reminding us of the beauty and order that arise when human beings commit to kindness, structure, and shared understanding. You walk on, carrying with you the stillness of the ancestral hall, the resonance of ritual music, and the deep sense that through sincerity and form, we cultivate something enduring and sacred. The formal structures of Confucian rites dissolve into mist, and the world around you shifts, becoming more fluid, alive, and subtly charged with unseen presence. The air feels as though it carries a gentle current, linking each tree, rock, and breath into one vibrant tapestry. You are now stepping into the realm of Qi, pronounced Qi, the vital life force in ancient Chinese thought. This isn't a philosophy in the strict sense, but a foundational concept that underpins medicine, martial arts, cosmology, and even spirituality. Imagine standing in a vast, invisible stream, its currents flowing within and around you, connecting you to everything that breathes. This is Qi, the breath of the cosmos, the unseen vitality animating all of existence. As you walk, subtle signs reveal the presence of Qi: the quiet sway of branches, the glowing health of a plant, the kinetic vibrancy of a rushing stream. Qi is both physical and immaterial. It flows through the body as breath and energy, through the earth as air and wind, through the universe as the pulse of life. When Qi flows freely, health and harmony prevail. When obstructed, disorder and illness arise. You might find yourself inhaling a little deeper, feeling a connection to the currents that quietly sustain you. Historically, Qi shaped much of traditional Chinese medicine, TCM. Practitioners viewed disease as an imbalance or blockage of Qi. Acupuncture, herbal remedies, diet, and massage all aim to regulate this flow. The body is mapped with meridians, invisible channels guiding Qi. Restoring balance means restoring flow. What's less known is how ancient Chinese astronomy and cosmology also invoked Qi to explain celestial phenomena. The movement of planets, the appearance of comets, even shifts in weather were attributed to cosmic Qi patterns influencing earthly life. Soon you pass a tranquil martial arts ground. Practitioners move in slow, deliberate forms, graceful, powerful, in tune with invisible rhythms. This is Kai in motion. In Tai Chi, Qigong, and Kung Fu, martial training focuses not just on muscle or reflex, but on directing internal energy. Movements are fluid because they mirror the natural flow of Qi. Power arises not from force, but from alignment with that energy. Imagine conducting an orchestra within your body, each gesture fueled by the invisible current of life. With each step, you begin to sense how deeply Qi connects all living things. The same energy animates you, the trees, the mountains, and the sky. The boundaries between self and world blur. This unity fosters a compassionate awareness. To hurt another is to disrupt a shared current. You are not a solitary being in a mechanical world, but a participant in a great living field. The energy of the bird overhead, the grass underfoot, and your heartbeat are all linked by Qi. Also informs feng shui, the art of arranging physical space to harmonize energy flow. The direction of doors, placement of furniture, and shape of buildings are all chosen to support healthy Qi movement. The goal is to cultivate environments that nourish well-being and attract prosperity. It's like composing an energetic symphony within your home. Traditional feng shui masters used complex calculations to analyze how wind, water, and orientation influence energy dynamic, shaping not just homes, but entire cities. You find yourself in a misty valley. The clouds swirl slowly, obscuring and revealing the contours of mountains. This dynamic dance mirrors the Taoist cosmological view. From the formless Tao emerged Qi, which divided into yin and yang, and from their interplay, all things came into being. This cosmology doesn't require a creator. It requires only the flow of energy, cycling through transformation. Everything from galaxies to grains of rice is a temporary arrangement of Qi. Consider the ancient Taoist practice of nourishing life, yang sheng. This isn't merely about avoiding illness. It's about cultivating vitality through breathwork, meditation, balanced diet, and harmonious living. Emotional equilibrium and moderation were central to preserving one's Qi. The aim was not to chase immortality through force, but to flow gently with life's rhythms, maintaining one's internal energy as long as possible. It was a wellness philosophy that emphasized sustainability over intensity. Some Taoist sects developed complex inner alchemy systems for Qi refinement. Through visualization, breath control, and meditation, they sought to transmute physical energy into spiritual insight, sometimes aiming for immortality. These practices were esoteric and often guarded within lineages, filled with symbols like immortal embryos or spiritual furnaces. While difficult to interpret today, they reveal how deeply ancient practitioners explored Qi as both a spiritual and physiological force dot. As afternoon light filters through the fog, you become attuned to the world not as solid objects, but as energy in constant motion. The flutter of a leaf, the movement of your breath, the stillness between footsteps, all feel alive with quiet power. The concept of Qi trains your awareness, helping you notice shifts in mood, vitality, or environment. It encourages you to move with intention and presence. Reflect on times when you felt suddenly energized or inexplicably drained. These may have been moments of Qi shifting in or out of harmony. Tiredness, irritability, inspiration, all are seen, not just as psychological states, but energetic ones. Paying attention to your own Qi is like learning to read your internal weather. Are you calm, turbulent, stagnant, or flowing freely? Qi bridges the physical and the spiritual. It is breath, blood, and bone, but also intuition, presence, and insight. This holistic view resists the Western tendency to divide body and mind. Instead, Qi theory suggests that all dimensions of being are interwoven. Your thoughts influence your energy. Your posture affects your emotions. It's a model of human experience that invites integration and coherence. As twilight descends, the mist thickens, and the energy of the world seems to slow. You feel a deep stillness, not of absence, but of quiet fullness. Qi does not shout, it hums, pulses, and flows. It offers no dogma, only attention. The presence of Qi invites you to live more consciously, to align with the flow rather than fight it, to nourish your energy rather than deplete it. It whispers that vitality is a relationship, not a resource, something we cultivate through rhythm, reverence, and rest. You carry with you now the memory of the martial artist's grace, the gentle swirl of mist, and the steady breath that connects you to everything. The path of Kai continues not as a fixed doctrine, but as a living awareness, a way of tuning into the pulse of the world. It teaches that health, insight, and connection all begin with how we breathe, how we move, and how we flow with the unseen life within and around us. The subtle, pervasive flow of Qi gently shifts, and the landscape around you becomes more rugged, marked by challenging terrain and the quiet resilience of enduring spirits. The air feels tinged with a poignant sense of displacement, of intellect, enduring hardship, and of wisdom persisting despite adversity. You are now stepping into the realm of philosophers in exile, a recurring theme in Chinese history. Brilliant thinkers, driven by political upheaval, moral conviction, or sheer misfortune, found themselves removed from power, often forced into solitude or long journeys. Imagine a lone scholar in worn robes, mind sharp, walking through misty mountains or living in humble seclusion, his thoughts deepening in the crucible of adversity. This wasn't a formal school of philosophy, but a shared experience that shaped many traditions, infusing their teachings with personal struggle and hard-earned insight. As you walk, you see sparse trees clinging to rocky slopes, rivers flowing around obstacles, and a solitary figure tending a quiet garden. These images reflect the resilience and introspection born of exile. For many philosophers, exile wasn't just punishment but an opportunity for reflection. Removed from courtly distractions, they refined their thought, tested ideas against hardship, and wrote with greater clarity and conviction. It was a forced retreat that often brought forth unparalleled wisdom. You may sense a quiet strength stirring within you, a recognition that hardship can deepen insight. One famous example is Qu Yuan, a poet and minister from the state of Sichu. Loyal and incorruptible, he was exiled by jealous rivals. During his banishment, he composed profound poetry, expressing his grief and patriotism, most notably in Li Sao, Encountering Sorrow, now a cornerstone of Chinese literature. In despair over his state's decline, he eventually drowned himself in the Meluo River. His memory is honored in the Dragon Boat Festival. A lesser-known fact is that many exiled thinkers preserved and compiled classic texts during their solitude, transforming misfortune into cultural legacy. Historians debate the specifics of Qu Yuan's life, but his symbolic role as the righteous man in exile remains unquestioned. The path leads you past a modest hut near a stream, where only leaves rustle and water murmurs. This reflects the reclusive lives many thinkers led. Confucius wandered for years, often unheeded, feeling like a stray dog. Zhuangzi refused government posts, preferring freedom in simplicity. Later, under imperial rule, loyal officials were often banished to remote provinces. This distance from power offered a new perspective, allowing them to critique society more freely. It's like stepping back from a large painting to see its flaws and balance more clearly. You might reflect on solitude's value and how space can bring clarity. As you continue, a sense of admiration grows for those who held on to their convictions in difficult times. Exile brought poverty, loneliness, and loss of influence. Yet many produced their finest work under these conditions, exploring human resilience morality, and power with renewed depth. Their writings reveal a powerful truth, even stripped of worldly status. The mind remains free. You might recall moments in your life where adversity clarified your values and deepened your insight. Some sages deliberately chose exile. Known as hidden dragons, Kanglong, they rejected official life to preserve their ideals. Influenced by Taoist thought, they believed true wisdom could not survive court corruption. Their choice reflected strength, not retreat, a commitment to integrity over ambition. It's like choosing obscurity to protect one's essence. Historians debate their motives. Were they spiritually detached or politically strategic? Either way, their independence added depth to their legacy. You now approach a windswept pass, its peaks standing firm against the sky. The terrain is stark, but majestic, symbolizing the inner landscape of those in exile. Their outer lives may have been difficult, but inwardly they journeyed deep, confronting questions of justice, fate, and suffering. Many found strength in their beliefs, whether Confucian duty or Taoist surrender to change. It's an inner odyssey where isolation became insight. You might feel empathy, sensing how inner resilience can emerge in life's hardest moments. Exile served as a crucible, forcing philosophers to re-examine their ideas. Without status or comfort, they relied on inner virtue and adaptability. Confucians emphasized maintaining ethics regardless of conditions. Taoists embraced uncertainty and natural flow. Their hardships often clarified their philosophies, turning abstract principles into lived truths. It echoes the saying, "What doesn't break you strengthens you." Their ideas became more grounded, more human, shaped by lived experience. Interestingly, exile also spread their teachings. Banished scholars brought their ideas to distant provinces, influencing local elites and founding schools. This accidental diffusion enriched the cultural life of remote areas. Thus, punishment inadvertently led to intellectual expansion. Historians trace these unexpected cultural currents, showing how personal loss became collective gain. As the sun lowers and shadows lengthen, a sense of perseverance takes hold. The stories of philosophers in exile inspire quiet resolve. They show that solitude can bring strength, that dignity can persist without recognition, and that hardship can refine the soul. Their example encourages you to see your own challenges as opportunities for growth and clarity. You may remember your own turning points, moments of loss, isolation, or failure that led to unexpected growth. The legacy of these thinkers is a reminder, even in darkness, the mind can shine. Their writings, born from pain, continue to illuminate. They urge us to endure with integrity. Often, their texts employed metaphor and allegory. Unable to openly criticize rulers, they used poetry, parables, and historical references to veil their messages. This added richness to their prose and required deep reading to uncover hidden meanings. You can almost sense the layered wisdom, the elegant defiance wrapped in beauty. Scholars today still decode these texts, revealing their subtle resistance and moral critique. As evening settles in, the stars above seem like watchful eyes, constant in their silent presence. You feel a quiet strength and deep reverence for those who turn suffering into wisdom. The legacy of philosophers in exile is not one of lament, but of endurance, transformation, and truth. Their stories remind us that wisdom often grows in quiet places, far from applause, in the steadfast heart of those who choose integrity over ease. The rugged path of enduring thought stretches on, offering timeless insight into the unbreakable resilience of the human spirit. As the rugged solitude of exiled philosophers begins to fade, the landscape transforms once more now into something more structured, expansive, and cohesive. The winds carry with them not the sting of hardship, but the calm weight of wisdom consolidated. You are now stepping into the intellectual heart of the Han Dynasty, 206 BC E to 220 CE, a period not known for inventing new schools of thought, but for harmonizing old ones into a unified foundation for empire. Imagine standing within a vast imperial archive, scholars moving quietly between rows of ancient scrolls, scribes copying classical texts by candlelight, and debates echoing softly from halls where the legacy of centuries is being meticulously integrated. This was not chaos, but convergence, a time when the 100 schools of thought were no longer rivals, but resources for building something enduring. The most defining development of this era was the elevation of Confucianism as state ideology. But this was not the pure, early Confucianism of Confucius himself. It had evolved, refined, expanded, and merged with ideas from Taoism, legalism, and the cosmological yin-yang school. The result was a rich and adaptable system tailored for governing a vast and complex civilization. Like a carefully engineered operating system, this new ideology drew on the best tools from each tradition. You pass beneath the gates of a grand imperial academy, where young students prepare for the newly established imperial examination system. These exams, based heavily on Confucian texts, became the primary gateway into government service. The goal was not merely to train competent officials, but to cultivate a morally upright bureaucracy guided by the principles of virtue, propriety, and loyalty. This institutional innovation would define Chinese civil administration for centuries. Yet even as Confucianism dominated officially, the Han court maintained a subtle pluralism. Taoist thought was respected, legalist techniques were quietly deployed in administration, and natural cosmology remained a guiding force. The intellectual climate was not monolithic. Rather, it was a careful synthesis. Harmony did not mean sameness. Meant balance. Soon, your path leads you to a celestial observatory, where scholars peer through bamboo instruments and record the stars. Here, yin-yang and 5 elements, huaxing, cosmology, come alive. In Han belief, the cosmos and the political world were deeply interconnected. Earthquakes, floods, eclipses, these were not random. They were signs from heaven, reflecting the emperor's moral alignment. As son of heaven, the emperor served as the vital link between celestial order and human affairs. From rituals and architecture to calendar reform and policy, this cosmological worldview shaped governance at every level. Society was imagined as a smaller version of the cosmos. The proper alignment of ruler, nature, and ritual was believed to ensure peace and prosperity. It's like witnessing a grand, celestial machine, each piece perfectly timed, every action reverberating through heaven and earth. But this was also an era of realism and pragmatism. Moral cultivation alone could not manage an empire. Han administrators embraced legalist methods, clear laws, structured bureaucracy, and systems of reward and punishment. It was an elegant balance. Morality guided the ideal. Law ensured the practical. You might recognize this in your own life, the challenge of integrating values with the tools needed to live or lead effectively. Among the luminaries of this period, one name stands out, Sima Qian, the grand historian. Though not a philosopher, in the conventional sense, his monumental records of the grand historian, Shiji, blended history, biography, and ethics into a powerful intellectual legacy. His accounts did not merely record events, they offered lessons, critiques, and subtle praise through narrative. It's like a mirror held to the past, teaching virtue and caution through the lives of emperors, rebels, and sages alike. As you approach the center of an imperial city, its layout reveals something deeper. Architecture shaped by ideology. Streets align with cosmic directions. Palaces and gates mirror celestial order. This reflects the Han ambition to embody their worldview in stone and ritual. Beyond legal structures and administrative systems, they were crafting a civilizational identity, a sense of shared culture, morality, and purpose rooted in Confucianism. One concept that reached new depth in this period was the mandate of heaven. It had long existed, but Han thinkers sharpened it. Rulers held power not by force or inheritance alone, but through moral legitimacy. If they failed to uphold virtue, they risked losing heaven's favor and their throne. This framework gave dynastic transitions a moral logic, while reminding emperors that power must be exercised with integrity. A curious aspect of Han thought was the importance placed on omens and portents. Unusual natural events were closely recorded and interpreted. While modern readers might dismiss this as superstition, in the Han worldview, these signs were a crucial means of cosmic feedback. More subtly, they provided scholars with a tool to critique the emperor without confrontation. A flood, after all, could be read as heaven's disapproval of corruption, an elegant, indirect form of counsel. Continuing your journey, you encounter a lesser-known yet influential school, Huang Lao Taoism, named after the Yellow Emperor and Laozi. This philosophy blended Taoist ideas of non-action, Wu Wei, with legalist governance. It envisioned rulers who ruled by doing less, relying on natural order, minimal interference, and clear structures. Though less prominent later, Huang Lao had a powerful presence in the early Han and represents the ongoing dialogue between flexibility and control within Chinese political philosophy. As the sun begins to dip low behind vast imperial courtyards, you feel a calm appreciation for the deep integration of thought and order. Han Dynasty philosophy was not driven by division, but by harmony, by the ability to unify many streams of wisdom into a single, flowing current strong enough to sustain a civilization. It's a reminder that while ideals matter, enduring systems are built through synthesis and careful design. You may find yourself reflecting on how your own worldview has emerged not from one idea, but from many. The lessons, stories, and values you carry have been shaped by numerous experiences and influences. The Han remind us that strength lies not in purity, but in balance, in choosing, refining, and harmonizing what we inherit. As dusk deepens, and the sky begins to shimmer with the ancient light of stars, once tracked by Han scholars, you carry with you the vision of a civilization that dared to combine wisdom, ethics, science, and governance into one great system. The whispers of Han thought are not rigid doctrines, but gentle harmonies inviting you to reflect, adapt, and integrate. The path of synthesis continues, offering timeless insight into how a civilization and an individual can find strength, not by choosing one path, but by bringing many into wise alignment. The structured harmony of Han Dynasty thought slowly gives way to a more permeable, receptive landscape, one marked by incense smoke, distant rhythms, and the subtle scent of foreign spices. You now step into the transformative realm of Buddhism's arrival in China, a spiritual and philosophical current that over centuries reshaped the Chinese worldview. This wasn't a mere importation of belief. It was a long, complex encounter that would alter China's intellectual, artistic, and spiritual DNA. Imagine a vast river flowing from distant mountains, steadily merging with another, older current. Over time, the water becomes indistinguishable from the stream it enters. This is the story of Buddhism's gradual Sinicization, the process by which Indian metaphysics, ethics, and cosmology were slowly absorbed, reinterpreted, and made Chinese. As you walk, you notice simple stone Buddhas emerging from newly carved cave walls, monks chanting beside translation desks, and travelers whispering unfamiliar terms like nirvana, karma, and emptiness. Buddhism introduced a different vision of life, and death-centered, not on harmony with nature or social duty, but on the end of suffering, the impermanence of the self, and liberation through inner awakening. These ideas were foreign to Confucian and Taoist traditions, but they carried something essential: hope amid uncertainty. One critical period that allowed Buddhism to take root was the disunion following the fall of the Han Dynasty. During this time of political chaos and dynastic instability, known as the Six Dynasties period, many found traditional values insufficient. Amid constant warfare and social fragmentation, Buddhism's promise of transcending suffering and attaining peace resonated with aristocrats and commoners alike. Interestingly, the first Buddhist translators in China often used Taoist terminology to convey unfamiliar ideas. Terms like Wu, non-being, and Tao, the way, were applied to concepts like nirvana or emptiness. While this created some confusion, it also created a bridge, making Buddhist ideas more digestible to Chinese readers. Historians still examine these early translations, noting how linguistic borrowing led to both misunderstanding and rich fusion. Your path leads you into a quiet monastery courtyard. A monk explains the concept of emptiness, anyat, to a group of listeners. This fundamental Buddhist teaching, that all phenomena lack fixed essence, challenged existing Chinese views. Confucian ethics emphasized role, order, and structure. Taoism honored a formless but substantive way. Emptiness seemed like a rejection of both. Yet over time, Chinese thinkers found resonance in the interdependence and non-duality hidden in the idea. They began to see emptiness not as nothingness, but as potential, fluidity, and the ground of all transformation. Meanwhile, Buddhism didn't just enter China passively, it changed Taoism too. As monasteries spread and Buddhist rituals flourished, Taoists responded by building their own temples, forming clergy, and incorporating karmic logic into their cosmology. This dynamic response wasn't defeat, it was reinvention. Like two rivers running beside each other, Taoism and Buddhism exchanged minerals, carved new paths, and reshaped the spiritual terrain. Another crucial factor in Buddhism's spread was the rise of what scholars call gentry Buddhism. Intellectuals and aristocrats, often disillusioned with political life, turned to Buddhism not just for solace, but for philosophical stimulation. Schools like Madhyamaka and Yogacara provided rigorous metaphysical systems. These thinkers didn't abandon Confucian or Taoist frameworks. They used Buddhism to expand and challenge them. Think of it as a quiet salon of minds, where ideas flowed freely, crossing boundaries of origin. Your path now winds into a richly painted grotto, where images of bodhisattvas, heavenly realms, and past life stories unfold across the rock face. Buddhism brought with it new narrative forms and artistic motifs. The pagoda replaced the ancestral shrine. The Buddha's life became a model, not just of wisdom, but of dramatic moral storytelling. Over time, Buddhist themes entered Chinese folk. Tales, poetry, theater, and even local festivals. The influence was not confined to temples, it spread across language, art, and imagination. One of the most profound syntheses emerged in the form of Chan Buddhism, later known as Zen in Japan. Chan rejected dependence on scriptures and rituals, focusing instead on direct insight, meditation, and sudden enlightenment. This emphasis on naturalness, spontaneity, and inner realization resonated deeply with both Taoist simplicity and Confucian discipline. Chan didn't simply imitate Indian Buddhism, it became something uniquely Chinese. Buddhism also had a practical role. Monasteries were not just spiritual centers. They became economic hubs, schools, and refuges during war and famine. They held land, employed workers, and provided food and shelter to the needy. In times of dynastic collapse, monasteries became vital social institutions, offering stability where the state could not. This aspect of Buddhism is often overlooked, yet it was crucial for its entrenchment in Chinese society. As afternoon sunlight filters through temple eaves, you feel a growing sense of respect, not just for Buddhism's ideas, but for its capacity to transform while being transformed. Its journey in China is one of deep integration. Foreign concepts made local through interpretation, conflict, and creativity. You may begin to reflect on your own experiences, moments when a new idea or unfamiliar perspective reshaped how you saw the world. Buddhism in China reminds us that wisdom is not static, and traditions grow not by resisting influence, but by embracing and reshaping it. Yet, the path was not without friction. Several times in Chinese history, Buddhism faced persecution, particularly during the Tang Dynasty, when Confucian officials and Taoist rivals argued that monasteries grew too rich, too independent, or too foreign. Emperors closed temples, seized land, and expelled monks. And yet, each time, Buddhism returned stronger, a testament to its deep resonance with the people. These periods of suppression are key to understanding the ongoing tension between spiritual innovation and cultural conservatism. Some saw Buddhism as an outsider, others as a savior. Its very strength lay in its ability to be both dot as evening falls. An incense lingers in the cool air. You carry with you not a single doctrine, but a spiritual memory of how foreign wisdom met native soil, and something entirely new took root. The story of Buddhism in China is a quiet miracle, not conquest, but transformation, not conflict, but conversation. You may now see the gentle smile of a Buddha, the still form of a meditating monk, or the poetic beauty of a sutra written in Chinese calligraphy, and know that this isn't just a borrowed faith, but a deeply Chinese expression of human awakening. The evolving path of spiritual integration continues, offering timeless insight into the beauty and complexity of cultural exchange and the enduring possibility of transformation through openness. The vibrant, adaptable spirit of Buddhist integration begins to recede, and the landscape around you shifts, growing more structured, more disciplined, infused with a deep sense of intellectual purpose. The air feels clearer now, almost austere, as if centuries of thought have been refined into something sharp and purposeful. You are entering the era of the Neo-Confucian revival, which emerged in the Tang Dynasty and reached its intellectual zenith during the Song Dynasty. Here, the scene is no longer temple bells and cave paintings, but scholars' academies, scroll-lined, studios, and the quiet rustle of students engaged in debate. This was not a return to old Confucianism, but a bold reconstruction, an attempt to build a complete philosophical system, grounded in indigenous Chinese values, yet capable of rivaling the metaphysical and ethical depth of Buddhism. At the center of this movement stood thinkers like Zhu and Sheng Yi, who crafted an intricate synthesis by drawing from Confucian classics, Taoist cosmology, and Buddhist contemplative practices. The result was a framework centered around two key ideas: Li, the universal principle that underlies all things, and Qi, the vital force or material energy through which Li is expressed. Every object, every human, carried its own lie, and by cultivating oneself, both morally and intellectually, one could bring that principle into alignment with the cosmic order. This fusion wasn't purely theoretical. It had profound real-world implications. Zhu Xi's interpretations became the foundation of the imperial examination system, shaping Chinese education, administration, and social ethics for over 700 years. Neo-Confucianism became the official ideology of the state, its influence permeating everything from family structure to foreign policy. Yet it was far from monolithic. Alternative voices emerged, like Wang Yangming, who later argued that moral knowledge was innate and could be accessed through introspection rather than the external study of things. His school of mind emphasized intuition and direct experience over intellectual investigation, providing a dynamic internal dialogue within the larger Neo-Confucian tradition. As you walk through a tranquil academic courtyard, you pass groups of scholars debating the nature of Li and Qi, engaging in what Zhu Xi called the investigation of things, Zhu Wu. This wasn't simply science or philosophy. It was a moral endeavor. By examining nature, social relations, and oneself, the scholar hoped to reveal the inherent patterns of truth and align his heart with them. It's like slowly tuning an instrument to the music of the cosmos. The pursuit of self-cultivation was central. Neo-Confucians believed that through disciplined study, ethical practice, and quiet contemplation, one could purify the key, deepen understanding of Li, and realize one's inherently good nature. This wasn't just about becoming a better citizen. It was about becoming a sage, someone who embodied harmony between self and universe. A particularly influential reinterpretation came from the great learning, Daxu, which Zhu Xi elevated as a core text. It laid out a step-by-step path. Begin with the investigation of things, rectify the mind, cultivate the self, regulate the family, govern the state, and bring peace to the world. This framework provided a blueprint not just for personal growth, but for societal transformation, starting from the individual and expanding outward to shape civilization itself. You now pass into a grand lecture hall, where scholars sit in measured silence, immersed in classical texts. Neo-Confucianism championed clarity, reason, and coherence. While open to spiritual insight, it resisted the mysticism of late Taoism and the perceived nihilism of certain Buddhist schools. Instead, it built encyclopedic systems, philosophical maps, where every moral and metaphysical issue had its place. Consider the subtle power of the phrase. Heavenly principle is one, but its manifestations are many. Li Fen Shu. It held that while universal truths exist, their expressions are as varied as people and situations. This concept allowed for a unity of principle with a diversity of applications, a philosophical bridge between order and flexibility, a lesser-known dimension of this revival was the role of private academies, Shu Yuan. Operating outside imperial control, these centers fostered intellectual independence and sometimes even gentle resistance to state orthodoxy. They became crucibles of new ideas and moral critique, maintaining a spirit of inquiry while still respecting Confucian tradition. It's a reminder that orthodoxy, even when powerful, is rarely without tension. In the quiet of these spaces, another adapted practice flourished, meditation, Jingzuo, borrowed from Buddhist and Taoist traditions, but reframed in a Confucian context. This form of silent sitting aimed not at enlightenment or mystical experience, but at clarifying the mind, refining thought, and focusing on moral intent. Through this, Neo-Confucianism developed a spiritual depth rooted in practical ethics. As the day wears on, the sun casts sharp, clean shadows, mirroring the clarity of thought this era pursued. You may feel a quiet resolve rise within you. Wish to align your actions with your beliefs, to bridge understanding and behavior. For Neo-Confucians, knowledge and action were inseparable. To know the good was to do the good. There was no virtue in theory alone. Now the path widens into a long corridor lined with portraits of thinkers you've met on this journey. From the balanced humanity of Confucius to Mencius's optimism and Zhuangzi's realism, from Mozi's utilitarian love to Han Fei's cold structure, you've walked through the great tapestry of Chinese thought. You've traced the flowing currents of Taoist spontaneity, consulted the divinations of the I Ching, and heard the soft murmur of Buddhist compassion carried along the Silk Road. In the Han Dynasty, you saw philosophy woven into bureaucracy, ideas institutionalized, and harmony pursued on a cosmic scale. With the rise of Buddhism, you witnessed transformation through encounter foreign ideas naturalized and recast into Chinese form. And now, in Neo-Confucianism, you've arrived at a synthesis, a conscious effort to refine, harmonize, and reaffirm. A uniquely Chinese vision of truth and virtue. This has not been a simple chronology, but a journey into the soul of a civilization. The ideas you've met are not relics of the past. They remain active forces in East Asian societies today, shaping education, values, and modes of thought. Even beyond their cultural origins, these philosophies speak to the universal human. Search for meaning, balance, and belonging. You carry with you not just a memory of systems and schools, but the soft imprint of questions that echo across time. What does it mean to live well? How do we align with truth? What is the role of the individual in a society, and the society in shaping the individual? As evening settles over the scholar's courtyard, the whispers of ancient minds rise like the wind through pine trees, measured, enduring, and wise. The Neo-Confucian revival is not a single voice, but a chorus of thought, urging discipline, reflection, and the noble pursuit of harmony. And so the journey concludes not with a final answer, but with a deeper question, carried gently into the quiet of night. Sweet dreams.